Gabrielle and Jade. Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. For everybody tuning into the live, guys, make sure that we are double tapping away on that phone screen and sharing out this live with a handful of friends. We need to try to get past this weird glitch on the live. You could really help us out by just engaging. That's all you got to do. You just got to spam the comment section, spam the like, spam the shares. Seriously, just start spamming random sentences down below. I mean, it's going to work. It's going to be great. It's going to work wonders. It's going to be marvelous. It's going to be phenomenal, quite frankly. That's right. That's right. But yeah, we're going to go and get our first guest up of the night. Ladies and gentlemen, let's see who we got. We're going to go and load up Everett as our first guest of the night. Make sure if you're in the queue that you do indeed think that men are better at leading than women. We are just looking for debates.
Shit.
Hello, Everett. How old are you?
Hey, man. I turned 18 2 months ago.
Great. Do you think that men are better at leading than women?
I do, but I definitely want to start with this. The point that you made against Mr. Starbucks, that if you had a gun to your head and you had to pick one, you would. I feel the same way, but I do think men instead of women.
So why
But
are
I
men
thought
better
that
at
was,
leading than
thought that
women?
was an excellent point. Just from, well, I kind of want to define something real quick. What do you mean by leading? Like, what's the answer you're looking for when you say leading? Like, an army or like a country, or what do you mean here?
If we want to use a real world example, we'll just use the president of our country.
Okay. I'll start with this. I think that different people definitely have different examples of what a good leader is.
Well, that's the point of these discussions, because I want to know why you think men are better at leading than women in accordance with what you think a good leader is. So please tell us why you think men are better.
I think a good leader is authoritative, and I think that men definitely are better at that. I think women are more empathetic and collaborative, and I think that if you were to look for that,
Was Hitler a good leader?
absolutely. Was Hitler? Absolutely not.
Okay, well, he's one of the most authoritative leader that we have in like modern history. Was MLK a good leader?
There's always going to be a far though. There's
Everett
far
was
left,
Everett
right.
was MLK a good leader?
Absolutely.
He's a really good example of a collaborative
I think so. I think so
non-authoritative
too.
leader.
I think so
I
too.
don't know if being like more authoritative made you a better leader. Like we'd expect to see under your worldview, MLK being a bad leader, Hitler being a good leader, in accordance with other examples as well. Typically, like the worst leaders that we could name all throughout history are never more collaboratively focused. They're always more authoritatively focused. I mean, think people like Mao Zedong, think people like leaders of the USSR, Stalin, think people like Mussolini, think people like Hitler. Would you be able to name like a significantly historically bad leader that was more focused on collaborative and communal efforts, furthering them and their people compared to being authoritarian?
Like a leader that would.
Like
Sorry,
a really bad leader from history that was definitely the furthest thing from being authoritarian, because that's what we'd expect following your logic.
Lenin.
Lenin? I know nothing about Lenin. Chat, was Lenin an authoritarian?
I'll say this. There's always going to be a
One
far
second.
side to something.
Let's
Oh,
let the
okay.
historians in the chat answer.
Okay.
Let's let the historians in the chat answer. Yes. Okay. According to the chat, Lenin was an authoritarian.
I don't believe so. I definitely want to say this. I think that there's always going to be a far side to everything. So you can always take you can always take a good thing and make it a bad thing. You can always take a bad thing and make it a good thing. So I mean, just by that logic, you can be too authoritarian, absolutely, and that's where we get people like Hitler.
No, but what we see is that all bad leaders throughout history that are like historically important are all authoritarians. Okay, like you
But
couldn't even give me like one example of a non-authoritarian, very bad leader that was more focused on those collaborative efforts. Lenin was definitely not focused on those collaborative efforts. Lenin was an authoritarian.
do you think
And like the
MLK
facts of the
wanted to be a
matter,
leader?
the fact that yes, the
No, I don't think that he wanted to. I don't what he was fighting for. I don't think he wanted to ever be in that position. I don't think
I
he did.
absolutely disagree. If he didn't want to be in that position, knowing that position would lead to higher levels of racial equality for Black Americans, which inevitably led to him losing his life, I highly doubt that he would have been in that position. Okay, right? But that was completely off base. My point is that you're saying the more authoritarian you are, the more likely you are to be a good leader. And I feel like we've credibly disputed that just with the historicity of good and bad leaders. I'd say that the more you are focused on long-term diplomatic relationships with other countries, the more that you're focused on doing what is necessary to lead your people and yourself in a good direction, while also looking out for the overall, I don't know, like greater good. All right, these are all good things to consider, and yeah, I don't know where to go from here because you asserted a hypothesis and it's been historically disproven. I don't know if there is anywhere to go from here.
I have a question for you. What
Well, why are you asking me a question? You asserted a hypothesis why men are better at leading than women, and it's been disproven with history.
it's because I think this is important to the debate. Do you think that there's a right answer to this question?
What do you mean by right answer? We're discussing our opinions and we're seeing who's a better one that's more internally consistent, with more evidence, aka being more justified. I don't know. But the point is that your position is definitely less coherent than mine.
Maybe so. And I definitely agree with a lot of things you said there. But I think that if we're looking at it from a historical standpoint, we've had a lot of amazing female leaders. I think that they were advocates. I think that I think women are a lot better at
I appreciate
advocating.
you for being kind to me, but I want you to assert an argument because you're not doing that.
I know I guess I agree with you. You know,
Okay.
I guess I do. Maybe I just kind of wanted to say that there. I do concur.
All right. Well, I appreciate you for coming up, man. We're going to move on to our next guest. For the 1.7 thousand people hanging out with us in the live here today, guys, make sure that we're sharing out the live with a handful of friends. It looks like we went up to 1.7K super duper quickly, and then we just got capped. So, ladies and gentlemen, don't know what that means. What's up, Fish? Do you think that men are better at leading than women?
I do.
And why is that?
Because the world is misogynistic.
Is the world racist?
Racism exists, yes.
Are white people better at leading than black people?
No. But I think when it comes to
So do you see how your logic fails? Do we understand that? He left.
Okay.
Oh no.
What's that
Dude,
so far?
I think the restart just fucked us over more. That's crazy. So 2.6K views in 7 minutes, and it's only gonna get worse. Richard, hey man, do you think that men are better at leading than women?
How you doing? I believe so, yes.
Do you think that you could turn off your Bluetooth? I hear my voice coming out of a speaker in the background, and it's delayed. And
Oh, yeah, that's definitely what it is. One sec.
You see how cooked it is, Zine?
Hello?
what's that, Parker?
It's so cooked, bro.
Yeah, it is.
Hello?
Oh, hey man, you're good now. So why do you think men are better at leading than women?
I got up for 3 today.
I believe it's this way because historically men have been conditioned to lead.
Okay, so they're just like society teaches men that they need to lead. Society doesn't teach women that, and that's why men are better at leading.
I believe at this point it's not so much teaching. I think it was already set for men to lead. At this point, they don't really teach men to lead because the system's already set. But I
Okay,
think
the system is set up in such a way where it's promoted for men to lead, stigmatized for women to lead. Thereby, men are better at leading than women. Is that what you're saying?
yes, I'm not, and it's a double-edged sword sort of kind of because women can lead because I've seen in relationships where the wife may be more intelligent or have advantages over the husband and bringing home the bacon or other matters. So women definitely can lead, but I believe sometime back in ancient history, maybe it's because of muscles, maybe because of testosterone, we were better hunters, better gatherers. I believe it became that way. But intellectually, I think it's an
Do you think
equal
white people are better at leading than black people because we live in a
No,
society in which
no,
promotes white people
no,
into
no.
higher positions of
No,
leadership
no,
than
no.
black people and further
No,
stigmatizes marginalized communities such as black Americans from becoming leaders?
No, I would never say that because
Great. So then we
it's
shouldn't
not-
say it about men and women either.
but that's the question.
I know, but we're disputing your logic. You're saying men
Right,
better at
but-
leading than one moment. You're saying men better at leading than women because it has been more promoted throughout history for men to lead and more stigmatized throughout history for women to lead. Thereby, according to your same logic, what would you respond to a white supremacist that walked up to you and said, white people better at leading than black people because it's been promoted throughout history for white people to lead and stigmatized throughout history for black people to lead? You guys are operating off of the same
I got what you're
principle.
saying. I got what you're saying. And that's why I said it's a double-edged sword because intellectually it's an even playing field. I don't believe men are necessarily more intelligent, but when the world,
Well, one second. You didn't let me finish what I was saying.
Go ahead.
So if a white supremacist walked up to you and gave you that argument, would you dispute their principle and say, well, that's not a fair argument for you to make?
no, it's not. It's absolutely
Oh,
not.
then it's not a fair argument for you to make either, because once again, you are operating off the same principle.
Of racism or misogynistic beliefs.
No, off of this bare line that misogyny means men are better at women, men at leading, like the logically analogous principle in the context of race would be, racism means white people are better at leading than black people, right? So we just completely toss that whole argument out the window. Do you understand conceptually what I'm saying? Chat, am I making myself
Absolutely.
clear? Chat, I don't, sometimes with these guests that like don't understand what I'm saying, it makes me like lose my damn mind because I feel like I'm explaining it as well as I can, and then it doesn't land. Okay, it
You're
seems
doing
like I'm
good.
clear.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeller.
That was a question for Chad, I guess.
Yeah, so I made my point. Seemingly it was clear. What's your response?
I said before, it's a double-edged sword. As far as intellect is concerned, yes, women can lead. But that's why I also made a point. The other edge is that back in ancient time, back in history, muscles is what ran the world. And I believe back then it was set up as such. But modern day, it's an even playing field because no technology.
So you think men and women are just as good of leaders now?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
yeah, but in
So-
times gone by,
So that's just like an insane thing to say. So like you're only saying because patriarchy was worse in the past and it discriminated against women insofar as it didn't let them get into positions of power, but
absolutely
it restricted their ability to be leaders.
Absolutely,
That has nothing to do with
1000%.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with the women being worse leaders. It has everything to do with them being restricted from being in those positions.
Yeah, that's like the same point that I was describing. He just wasn't getting it. What's up, Joe? Do you think that men are better at leading than women?
I don't really have a formed opinion. I don't really agree with that. I just want to come up here and
All right.
Yeah,
Seems like
you can add up my main, by the way, and I can mute myself, and it might
Cool.
give us a little bit more push because
Cool,
it seems
cool,
like
cool.
we're getting some.
Yeah, okay, all right, ladies and gentlemen, it seems like we need to go over the ground rules of the live once more. So here are the ground rules, y'all. If you are in the queue, make sure that you do indeed think that men are better at leading than women. We are just looking for debates with misogynists. I want to have full confidence that whoever I click on from my queue, that they will be a raging misogynist, quite frankly. And for the 2.8 thousand people in here, make sure that you are sharing this live out with your friends. Double tap it on that phone screen. It looks like we're finally getting a little bit of push. Let's see how far we could ride that roller coaster while we're getting our next guest up into the box. So we got Trump 2024 loading up in here. Hopefully Trump 2024. Are you a misogynist?
Yes.
All right. Why do you think men are
What?
better at leading than women?
What?
Because I think Parker moans when he wipes.
Okay. Did you write that in the fanfic yourself? Or
Yeah.
did you just read it off of someone else's website? We apologize for the use of slurs, chat. Just don't even pay it mind. Don't react in the chat and move on. Let's go
block.
and see what our next guest is. Yeah, quite frankly, just moving on. All right.
I blocked them.
Yep, moving on. Hello, Ralph. How old are you?
18.
18, phenomenal. Do you think that men are better at leading than women?
I think that, like, I don't know how to fully explain it, but I think that with what we've seen, like, throughout history, I mean, there hasn't been many strong female leaders when it comes to, compared to how many strong male leaders there are. I don't think nowadays that it's such a big conversation. I think,
So are men better at leading than women or not?
from what I've seen, I'd say, yeah.
And
mean, I'd
that's
say-
because there's more examples of men leaders throughout history than women leaders?
Well, yeah, but you can't just, like, tune out, like, the patriarchal thing, because what? How come
Yeah.
a woman president has never won?
Yeah, because of misogyny.
Well, that doesn't make sense. Half the
What
country's
question?
women.
Wait, if we were to go back to 2007, what question would you ask?
What do you mean?
If someone in
didn't
2007 asked you if white people were better at leading than black people because we had never had a black president before, what would your response be?
Well, that's a good point, but I
was a
wouldn't say
question.
anything because
Well,
I'm not
ser-
pulling from.
I'm being so
not
dead
pulling
serious.
from U.S.
What would your
presidents. I'm
response
talking
be?
all throughout history.
And all throughout history, the same way, we've seen a disproportionate amount of men, leaders that are
wait.
men. We also see a disproportionate amount of leaders that are.
I have
that are white.
a good
Okay,
question.
go for
Do
it.
you think that gay people are worse leaders because there hasn't been like an openly gay president?
No, I wouldn't put words in my mouth either. I never said that.
No, but like you're just saying because they haven't had like a particular candidate that was president, that would indicate they have worse leaders.
No, I'm just saying that from what I've seen throughout history, there's more statistical reason for someone to believe that men are better leaders than women.
What statistical reason?
How many empires have been ruled under a woman compared to men?
How does that indicate that women are better leaders? Doesn't that just indicate women have only been haven't been allowed to be leaders?
Yeah, go ahead, Dean.
Respond to Parker's point, but after you respond to Parker's
what were you saying, Parker?
Doesn't that just mean that women haven't been allowed to be leaders? Not that
Well-
women are worse leaders.
No, look at the British Empire under Queen Elizabeth compared to right before during the 1800s.
Okay, so what did she do that made it worse?
She just didn't have a ruling fist as a man would.
A ruling fist as a man. What do you mean by that? What does that even fucking mean?
Men are made to be stronger leaders. That's been out throughout history. That's biblically. That's in every major
Oh, okay.
religion.
So what are the
Biblically,
differences
biblically.
between what are the differences between men and women that make men better at leading?
The Bible says it.
Well, no, not just biblically. It's in the Torah. It's in
So what are the differences?
That's in the
it's in the
Bible.
Quran.
Okay, what are the?
Well, no,
sir,
you can't say that the Bible is the Torah. The Torah, the
No,
Bible.
the Torah,
with
the
all-
Torah is
I-
in the Bible.
I'm asking.
Yes, and the New Testament. Okay, let's not get off track. I don't mean to get off track. I'm
I'm
sorry.
asking a question. What are the
Yeah.
differences between men and women that make men better at leading?
There's no genetic difference. It's just, from what I've experienced, I'm only 18 years old, but I'd say men are a lot more
genetic
logical and less irrational and emotional than women are, which
more
are traits of
logical.
a better leader.
And less emotional. I would actually say that men are more emotional. Let's see if we could agree on something. Is violent crime logical or emotional?
I don't, that's not logical or emotional. Violent crime doesn't lead, there's no statistic that shows that violent crime is an emotional crime.
Yeah, I'd absolutely say that violent crime is going to be predicated on emotional response to external stimuli. It's definitely not a logical one.
Wait, we could just ask him who's more likely to have a freak out rage at a bar.
Okay. I was going to run through 2 points there. I think the overwhelming point of what I wanted to assert was that violent crime is going to be an action that is indicative of a low level of emotional regulation. All right. Would you agree with me there?
Well, I feel like we're getting off topic. What does
We're not getting
men
off
being-
topic.
okay,
I could represent perfectly to you why these things are relevant. But
Yeah,
you
go
agree
ahead.
with me that violent crime, right, is an action indicative of a low level of emotional regulation.
yeah, I guess. I mean, women also commit violent crime.
Okay, just one moment. Would you also agree that self-unaliving is an action that's indicative of a low level of emotional regulation or just a high level of emotion?
High level of emotion.
Okay. All right, perfect. So men commit 92% of violent crimes and men commit 83% of self-unaliving. So it is the case, right, that just using these two empirical data points, we could absolutely assert and suggest the hypothesis that men have either higher levels of emotion or a lower level of emotional regulation within their decision-making processes.
So you're saying that women are better leaders because they're less emotional?
No, I don't think that we can make a generalization of one's leadership aptitudes on the basis of their gender identity. I'm simply suggesting that your hypothesis is false. If we had to qualify which gender out of the two, right, had a better proclivity towards emotional regulation within their decision-making processes, I'd say it'd probably be women.
Agree to disagree. I don't think that there's.
I've suggested evidence for my hypothesis being true and your hypothesis being false. Meanwhile,
Well,
you
my
haven't suggested any
hypothesis is
evidence
based off of historical evidence. My
Historical-
hypothesis is based off of
And we've already disputed
how
this. Do
many
you think-
strong
do you
and
think that white people
prosperous male leaders there has been
do you
compared
think-
to female leaders.
Do you think that white people specifically are more logical and less emotional than black people? Because it is the case that we've seen a disproportionate amount of white leaders on the global scale throughout history, in a smaller.
All right,
percentage
repeat
of
that
black
question
leaders.
again. The black and white question.
Yeah, we see a disproportionate amount of white leaders throughout the context of history in comparison to their overall representation in the populace. Same thing would be true, but the inverse in context of black people. So do you think that white people
Okay,
are more
I'm not
logical?
talking not. There has been an abundance of black leaders. I'm not speaking on U.S. presidents. I'm talking about throughout world history.
I'm talking about throughout world history too.
Okay, there has not been way more white leaders than black leaders.
I'm
There's not a
speaking
shit.
disproportionately so. Even if we want to look at like kingdoms ruled by black leaders in the context of Africa, right? And like the last 500 to 1,000 years, what happened? I mean, the white people came in, fucking colonized and destroyed them and stole all their resources, right? So if we were to follow your logic, right, we'd lead to the conclusion that white people are better at leading than black people. But of course, we know that's false. We just
No,
know that
look at
historically there's been high levels of racism.
Look at
high
the
levels of,
jihad
one
that
moment.
took over Europe.
Look at very high levels of racism. Look at very high levels of anti-black racism. Right, and we know that historically speaking, white Europeans have had access to more resources than black people, disproportionately so. But following your logic, that simply yield the conclusion that white people are better at leading than black people, right? And I mean, if you want to give a specific example of a black leader throughout history that did well, we could do the same thing with women, all right? Joan of Arc, Queen Elizabeth, Queen Victoria. I mean, for instance, England has never prospered to a higher level than it did under Queen Victoria. But I guess the overwhelming focus of my claim here is that we're simply looking at proportionalities, right? It is a case that there's been a disproportionate amount of white leaders even on the global scale.
Can you hear me now? Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, but I'd still just say that, like, I feel like, or from what my point I'm trying to make is that I don't think that race plays into it. I just think that men are better at leading than women are because of the abundance of statistics of what I've seen, but
So you're like race is irrelevant even though of the abundance of a disproportionate amount of white leaders, but gender is relevant because of the abundance of a disproportionate amount of men leaders.
well, no, I'm not saying that there's no black leader. I'm just not agreeing with your point that there's an abundance of white leaders over black.
There is, right? Anti-black racism has existed on the global scale, right? It's the case that we've seen this throughout history, especially today. There's an overabundance of white leaders, ill representative of the representation of the overall populace, and this has been historically true.
Look
Right?
at Egypt. Look at the Persians. Look at
Okay, go look at Germany and the UK. 2 women leaders. The point is disproportionality. Just naming like 1 or 2 like black leaders is not going to prove your point. It's about the proportionality. We see this within Fortune 500 companies as well. 95% of Fortune 500 CEOs are white, 5% are black. Right? If we were to follow your logic, white people would literally be better at leading companies than black people because of that disproportionate statistic. But obviously, we know that's false too. Right? Obviously.
well, what about worldwide?
What about worldwide? Yeah, that is worldwide, buddy. Fortune 500 companies are worldwide.
So then I'd have to agree with that point.
So you think that white people are better at leading companies than black people?
I'm not trying to say it in a bigoted way, but I'm saying statistically,
Percent of surgeons are men. That men are better at surgery than women.
yes, 100%.
Okay, well, so that's a funny one. So the American Medical Association and the Journal of the American Medical Association did a worldwide study over the course of 14 years on 1.4 million patients in 6 continents. Female surgeons outperform male surgeons to a significant degree. If you're operated on by a woman in comparison to men, you're less likely to die as a result of your surgery.
Well,
You're less
that's also
likely to-
because
one moment. And you're less likely to experience negative postoperative outcomes. So we literally know that women surgeons outperform men surgeons, even though they'd account for a minority of the representation in the field. And this fact alone absolutely disputes your hypothesis. What it demonstrates is that dominance within a field is not sufficient evidence to believe that the class of people that are dominating are better in the field.
Samantha, think of the $5, and Janine, think of the $3. Thank you so
With the
much.
surgeon thing you're saying, like if there's more male surgeons, then there's going to be a lot more bad surgery done. if you have an abundance of one thing, there's also a lot of bad. So back to that point, if there's an abundance
No,
of
we're
male
not just you know, 1 second. We're not just going to braze over that because you're forgetting about statistics. We qualify for things like that. It's proportionally speaking. Of course, there's going to be many more negative outcomes by male surgeons compared to female surgeons if there's more male surgeons than female surgeons. But of course, the study as conducted by the American Medical Association is going to account for that, and it's going to be a propensity or proportionality. Like it is statistically speaking, for every male surgeon compared for every female surgeon, you're more likely to experience bad outcomes from the male
Yeah,
than
per
the
capita.
female.
Do you know what per capita is?
This is very basic, like statistics that Parker could help explain to you.
No, I understand. So what you're saying is, with that all put into form, it statistically shows women are better surgeons than men.
Yes.
Yes.
Then I'll agree that women are better surgeons than men.
Yes, but what this demonstrates is that your hypothesis, if a group A of people dominates in a field compared to group B of people, they are literally better at performing, right? It shows that principle is insufficient to demonstrate, right, that group A is actually outperforming group B. Do you understand what I say? Do I need to rephrase that?
No, I get that. No, I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Right. So, and that's the principle you're using to justify that men are better at leading than women. All that you're saying is Group A men, right, have been more prevalent within leadership positions than Group B women. Therefore, Group A men are better at leading than Group B women, right? But that principle has been demonstrated by me, by Parker, and accepted by you as being insufficient to demonstrate that men are actually better at leading than women. Do you get it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm not opposed to like a female president. I'm not at all.
Okay. You just conceded the Parker. Did he
you
just
vote for
concede the
Kamala
argument?
Harris? Yes, he did. Did you vote for Kamala Harris?
No, I voted for Donald Trump.
Of course.
What do you mean, of course? I live in Massachusetts. I live in a very liberal state. I just prefer Donald Trump over Kamala.
Kamala, why? Sorry, I don't want to make it political, Dean.
Why? I'm not a fan of her immigration policies. That's the big one. I mean, I come from two Brazilian parents who moved here legally and are now U.S. citizens. I don't agree with.
Did you know that Donald Trump called people in Congress to undermine a bipartisan border bill?
I could not understand a word you just said. You spoke too fast.
Did you know that Donald Trump called people in Congress to undermine a bipartisan border bill?
Go crazy on his ass. Make it political. I'm going to go pee real quick. I'll be right back.
No, I didn't know that.
Okay, so yeah, so that actually had specifically more funding to build the wall, right? Which specifically would have built more wall than Trump ever built under his administration. It would have limited the amount of people coming to the country, to increase the amount of border agents, and made the asylum process go faster, so it takes not as long to go through and process all these different asylum claims, which then disincentivizes people to come here if they have invalid asylum claims.
Kamala did that?
Yeah, that's what she was advocating for. And Donald Trump called people in Congress to undermine the bill. She was working with people who were Trump-endorsed Republicans, and Donald Trump called people in Congress to undermine the bill because he didn't want Democrats to look good, because he cared more about running on the border being an issue than actually fundamentally fixing conditions at the border. And that's actually what led to these particular conditions happening under the Biden-Harris administration, as it is the case that it's been over a year and a half, since they wanted to implement the bipartisan border bill.
I mean, yeah, that's a good point. But the way I see it is the border was more secure under Trump, and
I know you use like level 1 logic, introduce nuance and critical thought, and you'll recognize that your thought processes are faulty, right? And that's what Parker's doing right now. He's introducing that further second level of like critical thought and examination, right, of fact, and like he's using that second level of critical thought and examination of fact to like disprove like your belief.
I mean, I'm not changing my beliefs at all. I'm just here to debate. Like this is a very forward-thinking conversation I'm having here.
You're not changing.
You guys
your
are making
beliefs at
great
all,
points. I'm
even though
not
they
just
could be,
being like
demonstrated.
no,
as
you're
facts.
wrong.
Like that's a problem. Like saying that you will not change what you believe in, even if there's a potentiality that more evidence will be suggested that you're wrong, is like very irrational. It's very bad to do.
Can you give me 5 reasons why I should have voted for Kamala Harris?
Go for it,
Kamala?
Parker.
A bipartisan infrastructure bill, Chips and Science Act, PACT Act, Inflation Reduction Act, right? And then she raised private funds to reduce likelihood of people coming here in the first place through the and then advocated for a bipartisan border bill. Those are the 5 good reasons.
Okay. All right. Well, I got to go do some homework, so Have a good night, guys.
Yeah, hey, for the 4.6 thousand people hanging out with us in here in the stream today, guys, make sure that we're double tapping away on that phone screen. We're going to go and get our next guest up to debate right now, y'all. But seriously, y'all, make sure that we are double tapping, make sure that we're sharing. Let's try to break through the shadow ban together. So yeah, everybody, make sure that we're double tapping. Parker, I'll respond to your text in about 3 minutes. I'm just updating the background, and then I'll respond to your text. What's up, BL? Do you think that men are better at leading than women?
Well, I just.
How old are you? How old are you?
Fetus.
Okay, I'm 7.
Yeah. We're gonna move on to our next guest, Frank. All right, I want to go over the ground rules of the live once again. If you're in the queue, make sure you're misogynist. All right, make sure that you think men are better at leading than women. If you don't think that, the queue's not the place for you to be. Hang out in the chat, hang out in the Discord. The only reason you should be hanging out in the queue is if you indeed do think that men are better at leading than women. Let's see if Frankie Poo followed the rules. Hello, Pookie. Do you think that men are better at leading than women?
I think they tend to be.
All right, so why do you think men are better at leading than women?
Well, I think, I don't know, maybe the society we grow up in leads us to go through certain paths in life. And I think, in general, I think it's true to say that women are less confrontational, like on average, right? Not to say a woman can't be a good leader, but usually they're not.
Yeah, so no, I just want to clarify on that. You're saying that women are less confrontational on average. Yeah, the reason that is because men drive their decision-making processes with emotion more than logic compared to women, right? So we'd expect women to be less confrontational due to a more logic.
Why do you say that?
Decision-making process compared
do you
to
know
men.
that?
Yeah, I'd say that we have an overabundance of evidence to suggest that's the case. Like apart from just readily accessible averages and IQ and EQ scores, we'd also just see it empirically true in society. Like men are more likely to commit violent crime, self-unalive, abuse hard drugs.
I'm sure that contributes. Do you think that's the main leading factor as to why women don't feel comfortable leading?
No, that was I wasn't even talking about leadership. I was talking about the reason why you said they're worse at leading, that being lower disposition towards confrontation. But I think that is just because they drive their decisions with more logic than emotion compared to men, and that's why men are more confrontational, right? It's because they don't understand the long-term repercussions of confrontation, how it could lead to negative consequences and outcomes for themselves, right? Because they're more likely to drive their decision-making processes off of their emotion, right? But that fact alone probably is a bad quality of the man that makes them worse at leading than women.
You think men are more emotional than women?
Yes, I do.
Really?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Is there anything to back that? Is that a thing?
Yeah,
I know
for
men
sure.
get angry, right? That's
there's so many empirical stats anywhere in society. It's always clear. First of all, just proclivity.
Just go on to Dean Withers Live.
Yeah, dude. Just look at me. I'm crashing out all the time, buddy, and I'm a man. Okay, right? But I guess the point is there's a high proclivity towards irrational, risk-adverse behaviors. Examples: gambling, drunk driving, reckless driving. There's a high proclivity towards emotionally driven irrational behaviors, crimes, violent crimes, self-unaliving, hard drug, substance abuse, and these are just all a preponderance of societal.
Sure, men are more aggressive. They're higher. They're more predisposed to do more risky actions. But that's not a causation argument. That's a correlation argument. You're saying that men have more emotion because of that, because they're more likely to get in car accidents.
And all the data in society would drive the fact that men are more likely to make decisions based upon emotion compared to logic compared to women. And then also you said that sure, men are more aggressive. Sure, men are more emotional in the context of aggression. That's what you just said. Because once again, aggression is an emotion. Right? And can you give me your reason why you believe women are more emotional than men? I doubt you'd be able to give me any.
I think women usually are better at integrating socially, right? I don't know. I don't really know any of the stats, right? But I just feel like women are more social creatures, right? For example, women with autism, they I read this somewhere that they're better at integrating socially, and they're more capable of hiding their autism than a male, for example.
Oh, I don't understand the relevance of the point. Let me ask you a question. Who's more sociable? You are a really good leader.
Sociable, what does that mean?
Yeah, ability to socialize with others. Who's better at socializing with others?
A leader.
You are a really good leader.
Probably a leader, no?
So that's a trait that we'd expect to see in leaders. So in other words, you just gave me one reason why women are better at leading than men.
True. Yeah. But wouldn't you say confrontation is a very important one? Maybe you're saying that they don't have it because of men, sure, but
No,
that's
I think that
why they
women
don't
could
have that
actually.
trait.
I think that women are absolutely like. So when you say that men are more confrontational on average than women, you're implicitly assuming that that means that they're like turned away from like rational confrontation, which I disagree with. I don't think that you'd be able to justify that women are predisposed and more adverse towards rational confrontation, or in other words, necessary confrontation than men. I don't think that's true at all. I think that we have so much evidence to suggest it's false. Just think about a woman with her babies. Okay, right? Obviously, if confrontation is necessary for a woman or it's conducive towards some rational outcome, such as the safety and well-being of her children, we will absolutely see a woman be confrontational, right? But the overwhelming point is the reason why we see this general statistic, men are more predisposed towards confrontation than women, is because of like irrational confrontation, like bar fights, like shooting and unaliving someone for no reason. Like tribalism, etc. Like that's why we see that general statistic, not because women are adverse towards like rational or necessary confrontation.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have any evidence, right? I'm gonna work off like anecdotal evidence, but like anecdotally, right? Maybe you could tell me like I'm like willing to change my mind if you could like somehow point me towards a stat. But like let's say I'm in a room like in a meeting, if there's like a woman there, I think she's unlikely to step up in comparison to the men every single time, right? Like in a meeting, they're talking about we're gonna do this for the company, and if you don't do this or that, does anybody have any questions? Do you want to da 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 da? Like I just feel like in any normal environment, women are just less likely to be confrontational. Like, for example, Kamala is a leader, right? Kamala is a confrontational individual.
Kamala.
She's a confrontational individual. She was a prosecutor.
I actually think that we see more historical examples of women leading necessary and just confrontation compared to men. Think about the suffragettes, for instance. Think about suffragettes. Think about pushes from feminism, right, today and historically speaking, right, to achieve a greater end in the recognition that confrontation is necessary. I think that women have no adversity or qualms with engaging in necessary or rational confrontation, right? And that is what you'd have to isolate with. Because, like, obviously, right, confrontation on its own is not always a good thing. In fact, confrontation can be a bad thing. If we just choose someone to be president on their proclivity to confrontation, who knows, we might choose someone that is going to launch a fucking nuke at Russia just because they hate Putin and they want to confront him. Okay, and that's obviously a very bad thing. Confrontation is always good. So, if you want to justify your hypothesis here, you have to isolate for rational and necessary confrontation and give me evidence or reason to believe that men are more likely to engage in that kind of confrontation than women. And if you can't make that isolation, well, then it is a case that you don't have an argument.
Could you steel man my argument?
I just did. I absolutely just steel man your argument. You're saying that men are better at leading than women due to the fact that they're more confrontational on average. The steel man to your position is A, right? You'd have to isolate for neurological predispositions to justify that this is going to be done via some biological sexual dimorphism between men and women, not because of societalization of men and women.
That is impossible.
And then B, once you could do that, you would then have to suggest an isolation for rational and necessary confrontation compared to irrational confrontation, which could be a negative quality for leadership. And because you can't do either of those two things, the argument is effectively cooked.
So it's impossible to prove the argument.
Yeah. Because like the data doesn't exist. Because men aren't more likely to engage in this type of like rational confrontation.
It's impossible to find proof for the argument because we can't find those traits, those dimorphic traits in individuals. Like right now, is that not true? Like, can we not just like, we're going to analyze these brains? Oh, men and women tend to be different in these places, right? That's not necessarily possible. We just have to work off studies and like work off averages and where things tend to go, right?
Word salad? Parker, how do you feel? Is that a word salad? Do you get that?
I didn't really get it, but you're just like, what you're not arguing is that like you have good enough reason. You're just arguing that like, I don't have the ability to do what's necessary to be able to establish like something that's most likely to be the case. You're just saying, I just feel like it.
Yeah.
And because I can't establish it any further than that, it's okay.
Yeah, and at the bare minimum, all that I'd ask of you is to demonstrate that men are more likely to engage in rational and necessary confrontation, because that's the only type of confrontation that could possibly be considered a good quality of a leader.
Can you demonstrate that women are capable of that?
No, because I'm not making the positive claim that women are better at leading than men. In fact, I'd say that being a man or being a woman is not like sufficient information to dictate if you're better at
I thought you
leading.
were.
No, I don't think. I think that saying men are better at leading than women, or saying that women are better at leading than men, is like the same thing as saying that people with blue eyes are better at leading than people with green eyes. Like, it's just like it doesn't give you sufficient information to make that dictation, and the generalizations are generally faulty and false.
Would you not say that like socially women are taught to be less likely to be leaders than men? Like,
Yeah. Society promotes men to be leaders and stigmatizes women to be leaders, meaning that men will be taught to be leaders to a higher level than women. That doesn't make them better at leading. The same thing's true between the dynamic of white people and black people. Would you say that white people are better at leading than black people? Probably not. Thereby, just because, right, there's these classes of oppressors, right, that are taught to a higher degree to be in these positions of leadership because that burden is placed on them by themselves, doesn't mean that they're actually better at fulfilling the role.
So we do live in a society, right? And there's going to be more men who try to like pursue leadership roles, and then women are not going to pursue so many leadership roles. So like, we're probably going to see more men who are better leading than women. Not to say that they're just inherently better, but because we live in a society that pushes men to become leaders. No.
So do you think that white people are better at leading than black people?
No.
But why? Because white people account for a disproportionate amount of presidents, leaders in institutions such as Fortune 500 CEOs, right? There's systemic racism, in which would offer better education to white people
what was
to
the claim?
become
What was the
leaders.
question? What did you ask?
But of course, you still don't think that white people are better at leading than black people, and I agree, they're not, right? And that's why your argument about men and women is faulty, because that is what you're arguing.
Well, maybe you could argue they tend to be, not that they're inherently better, right?
So you think that white people tend to be better at leading than black people?
Because of systemic racism, they're going to be disadvantaged individuals. So, and like, I'm gonna have to like bite like the bullet. You're gonna try to make me look like a racist, but like, yeah,
because that is racist.
How is that racist?
It is absolutely racism.
It's not inherent to their traits.
Leading than black people.
It's not inherent to their traits. Like, a black person is just as much capable as a white person to be a leader, right?
Right, you understand that like Charlie Kirk does the same thing with like quote unquote black culture. Like black culture, quote unquote, isn't like inherent to black people, but then Charlie Kirk will make the argument that black culture is so destructive and so bad and so terrible and all these bad things, right? Just because, right, you're instantiating that this isn't inherent to black people, the fact that you're still making the generalization that white people are better at leading is still racism.
Do you think that a culture could be better than another culture?
I think that any argument made...
What type of pivot was that?
First, that's a pivot. And like, secondly, I think that any argument made to like demonize the culture of black Americans to reflect on them, their abilities or aptitudes is racist. Right.
Like, would you not say that?
But I wanted to stay on topic. I don't want to have a conversation about culture. I want to have a conversation insofar as how, right, your argument would ultimately be false, and white people are not better at leading than black people, and you know the synonymous argument in the lens of men and women is also false.
I guess it's just the way you see it, right? It's like, do women tend to be better, or do men tend to be better? Like, statistically speaking, are there more people who are better at leading than women? Would you say that's true? That there are more men who are better at leading than women now in a society, and that's what we have now, right?
I don't even think if there was that you should operate on that as your basis. We'd be operating on for like proportionality. Like for instance, like there's probably more men surgeons that are quote unquote better than women surgeons just because of raw numbers. But like per capita proportionately, women surgeons outperform men surgeons, right? And you'd have to demonstrate that same per capita proportionality to be true of like leadership abilities. But I don't think you'd be able to do that.
I could agree with that. Proportionality would be better. But yeah, okay. I guess we don't really disagree on anything.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate you for coming up, Frank.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, Parker, I'm talking a bit. I'll let you take the next one. I feel bad.
You're good. You're good. You're good. Don't worry.
All right, we're gonna move on to our next guest. You guys, if you do want to support me or Parker, our Venmos, PayPal's, Cash Apps, they are all in the bio, y'all. We get 100% of the proceeds on this platform, so go straight to us. You could even attach your name in a message, and we'll give you a shout out on live and read it out. What's up, Josh? Are you a misogynist?
Hey, what's going on? No, I get
Samantha.
Men and women are two different. Men and women are two different types of tools, but I just read something here that single parents, women and men, children seem to fare better under single fathers than single mothers.
You're right, but we know that this isn't because the man's a man and the woman's a woman. We know that's because men have more. Well, actually, we don't even need to give reason. We'll demonstrate it this way. We know that's not because the man's a man and the woman's a woman. Because if we were to compare a two-parent household to a one-parent household, there's better outcomes in the two-parent household, regardless of it's a man and a woman, two men or two women. For instance, lesbian couples raising children have the same outcomes as a heterosexual couple, or as a two men couples. If it was truly predicated on men being better at producing better parental outcomes than women, we'd expect lesbian couples to have worse parental outcomes than two men, but that's not true. We see the same.
Right, but it's, man versus woman, I guess, right? It'd be single fathers against single mothers. They lead their children.
Why would we isolate to single fathers and single mothers? Like, if your logic would
we're-
follow, we'd expect worse outcomes from a lesbian couple, yeah?
I not really.